Welcome to the Tech Simple podcast. Independent insights into the latest AV technologies, as well as tips and best practices to optimize AV solutions for modern workplace and learning environments. Here are your hosts, David and Jonathan from Konnectus AV Consulting.
Well, hello everyone, and thanks again for joining Jonathan and I on another episode of the Tech Simple podcast. Hey, Jonathan, how are you, mate? How are you today?
Morning, I'm doing well, Dave. Really keen to get into this session today.
So we've got another special guest and a very interesting topic. We're going to be sort of looking at trends and insights once again. Tell us all about it. Who's our guest and what are we going to talk about?
Well, what we're going to be talking about is going to go into the past, and then we're also going to project into the future and have a look at changing trends for a couple of different types of spaces. So desktop video conferencing, we're going to have a look at that. We're going to have a look at the collaboration space and what it means to collaborate today and the future. And then we're going to have a look at video conferencing room design and how that's evolving and how tech can help solve those problems in those spaces. Now, to help us with that conversation, we have an industry expert, Paul Falzon. He's currently Regional Director at Neat, which is a video conferencing company, and also has great experience with other video conferencing companies like Cisco. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Jonathan and David, and appreciate you having me here today.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Paul, and looking forward to having a chat about, something we haven't really discussed before. I think it's very important, though, the different types of spaces that we find in workspace and how technology over the years has definitely changed and evolved. And you being all your experience there at Neat, the trends that you're seeing, and perhaps you could, share some of the insights of what is being forecast for the future. I think that's going to be great to share with the listeners today and sort of help us out for future design of workspaces. So we're going to be covering, first off, VC at the desktop. And I guess these types of units, you know what I'm talking about, those standalone units. They're a monitor, they're an all-in-one video conferencing system. They've got an inbuilt camera, inbuilt microphone, inbuilt speakers, the screen, everything like that. We've seen those before. I know Cisco have definitely had them before. I think Polycom back in the day as well. They never seemed to took off. I don't know, they were expensive, but they just never seemed to take off. I mean, do you know why that might be, Paul and Jonathan? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there's always the element of human behaviour and change. That's sometimes one of the biggest hurdles, is trying to get people to do something different, even if there is a perceived benefit or a tangible benefit. It can be hard to get people to follow. And I think that's something that you can't discount for 1 second. And I think when you ask people to change and do something different, you've got to reward them for that behavioural change. You have to reward them quite a bit for them to make that change. And those devices specifically have some amazing technology in them, no doubt. I'm sure you've tried them before. If we compare them to what people have done previously to collaborate at the desktop, generally you could be comparing it to their laptop. And laptops have definitely come a long way. The cameras have gotten better, the speakers have gotten better, but ultimately there's only so much that you can cram into a laptop. And I think, when you look at some of the devices and some of the ideas that have come from separate, dedicated collaboration devices at the desktop, I think the bit that maybe has confused some people in the past is like, you're asking them to change over to another device. And if we look at it at the context of having calls or meetings, they may be confused by the fact that, well, I could have done this on my laptop, so why wouldn't I continue to do that? Well, clearly there's benefits by going to a dedicated device, but it's making sure that people actually understand what that is, right? And, for one, the cameras tend to be better, the audio tends to be better, and obviously you've got the screen real estate. So when you're doing things like content sharing, etc., you've got a lot more to work with. But then the problem is, well, if I'm doing all of this stuff on this one device, I'm still sort of hamstrung by the fact that I've only got one screen. So what happens when we start doing things like content sharing or co-creation of content? That's where things sort of start to get a bit muddy and confusing, because you think, well, from that perspective, it's probably no different to using my laptop. And I think one of the things that I've seen, the idea of, well, how do you change that? So I think the thing that we should accept is that, the laptop is a really good device for creating content and sharing content. It's just got the right interfaces and all of those sort of things to make that work really well. I think one of the things that I saw coming to Neat was a new take on those devices, and that is, well, don't accept that it should be one or the other. Accept that, yes, it could be one or the other. You could just use your laptop, or you could use a dedicated desktop device. But importantly, actually use them in a way that you're actually working together with those devices, so that you've got a dedicated device doing what it does best, which is the audio and the visual. So the video conferencing call. And then you've got your laptop to work together with that device to do all of the content sharing or the co-creation of content. And that way you're getting the best of both worlds when using that device. And that's something that, we've been trying to take the customers to understand, well, look, this is not necessarily something that you're used to, but there is definitely benefit here. And this is how you're rewarded by that benefit.
I think it's quite 2 points there I heard you mention is people's behavior and interface. If I teleport myself back sort of 6 years ago, Polycom, or Poly as they're known now, and Cisco had these all-in-one video conferencing units. They were amazing. It was a great screen, it was a great camera, and it was a great microphone. But behavior was key. People at that time weren't really video calling each other.
Yeah.
So there wasn't that behavior of, I'm sitting at my desk and I'll just call someone. No, you would just get up, walk over in the office, tap someone on the shoulder and have a conversation. So there wasn't really a business need to do that video conferencing. I mean, yes, they were also very expensive, which was also kind of making them a bit of a luxury. And then the other one that you mentioned was about the interfaces. And I think you hit a good point here because, again, if I rewind 6 years ago, how did you make a call? Well, there wasn't really that one-touch calling. You couldn't use a mobile phone number. You couldn't be in, say, your Microsoft Teams application and click on someone's name and instantly call them. All of a sudden, you had to kind of remember an IP address or some SIP address or call some other room. And that was a real challenge for people to do. So I think, a combination of people really didn't need to do one-to-one video conferencing calls.
Yeah.
These all-in-one desktop units were very expensive and they were very hard to use.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of the three core reasons why they weren't well received and taken up.
Yeah. And
fast forward to today, and I think we're in a very different world. People are used to calling their colleagues or their partners in business directly using Teams. So it's a natural extension to do those one-to-one callings. And it's also a lot easier as well. Like these devices, I can plug my laptop, use all of the tools that I'm familiar with, but still get the great screen, still get the great camera, still get the great microphone that's been optimally placed.
Yeah.
So it's really changed that dynamic.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about dynamic, I think the way that we use the technology can be dynamic as well, because sometimes we give the example of working in an office location, right, which is where we tend to find these products deployed most of the time. There's the concept of a booked meeting and then a sort of spare of the moment ad hoc meeting, and you need to be able to sort of accommodate for both when you're working in a dynamic environment. And a spare of the moment one could be, well, I'm on another floor that I usually work from, I'm talking to a colleague, we agree that we need to dial in a customer or dial in a partner or dial in a colleague from another state or from overseas. Let's grab this meeting room and let's just make this happen really quickly, whether I've got my laptop with me or not. So accommodating for those scenarios, but then also accommodating for the planned meeting, which is, I know I'm going to be in this place. I'm going to walk in there. I'll most likely have my laptop with me because I might be planning to share content or co-create with someone. We sit down, we hit a button and we start the meeting and away we go. So there's an element of these devices can work together with your laptop, or they can stand on their own 2 feet and work without one to get you, those sort of ad hoc meetings catered for. And I think the other thing that we can't forget is also the platform providers are doing a really good job to accommodate for that as well. So you mentioned before, Jonathan, we're seeing now that I just do a Teams call and we're doing video and all that sort of thing. Well, that is also taken into consideration. So when we've now got dedicated hardware devices that can surface all of these Teams capabilities or Zoom capabilities, the UI and the way that we interact with those products has been greatly improved by the folks at Microsoft and Zoom and so forth, because they realize that, well, sometimes we're not always at our workstation or our desk. Sometimes we've actually got to go, and how do we make that Teams experience fluid and approachable and workable when we go into those meeting spaces? So a big emphasis has gone into making that very easy to navigate, and it's still improving. Even to this day, we're very close to the platforms in terms of as a hardware vendor, and we hear and see, take on board feedback and vice versa around how do we improve that experience for customers.
So, guys, I guess if I was to summarize what you've both just said here for the audience, there has been some significant change, a significant trend in this area. The product we're now talking about is really, it's almost as if it's the same as a room system. It's just that it's portable. So you take your little portable device, you could use it at your desk, you could use it at home, you could use it in a small focus room in the office. You can then, connect your laptop and, as you say, Paul, optimize each device for what it's optimized to do. So the portable device is sort of handling you seeing the faces of the people that you're talking to and picking up your voice and capturing you with the camera. And then you've got obviously your laptop to do all that good, content, whether it's content creation or sharing and whatnot, which is what a laptop is optimized to do. And then the simplification is the other key. So it's literally plug and play and push to get started, one button, very, very simple. So that plus the fact that it's a lot more economically appetizing, shall we say? That's probably the three big, massive changes that I'm hearing you guys talk about here. Is that a fair assumption? Feels that a fair sort of summary?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's right. And look, I think the big thing is, video is so pervasive. Like we've all got like a little mini recording studio in our pocket, which is our smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got our laptops. So, we don't have access to these technologies. But I think when we're actually really looking to bridge the gap of not being able to see someone face to face, the better the experience that we can provide means the more productive and the more capable that we can be as an organization. So, it can be very fatiguing, if you've got a video experience that is poor, right? We've seen it before. We've been on calls where we've got someone on a laptop and they've been talking to the audience for 30 minutes and the camera's looking up their nose because it's a laptop camera.
Yeah, 100%. Right. Even that minor detail is being basically sorted out by these types of products because the camera is elevated and at the right height, and it makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of thought that goes into the design of these products, and as we've seen them evolve over the years. And, it's also opening doors into other use cases. So some of the examples that you gave there, David, are your typical sort of workplace use case, whether it be a workstation, a small meeting space, your desk at home. These are traditionally where we have positioned these types of products in the past, whether it be Neat or other organizations that exist out there. But we're also seeing it now fitting into use cases specific to industry. So, it could be remote expert, it could be contact center, it could be virtual receptionist, it could be kiosk. So, those all have a requirement for video in a virtual sense, where we're connecting people to other people that can't be there in person. And the better that we can make the quality of that experience, more likelihood that we're going to get the outcome that we're looking for, whether it be a good employee experience or a good customer experience.
Oh, that's 100%. And the same can be said about collaboration spaces if we want to move on to talk about those.
Sure.
Again, in the past, we've seen those as being relatively simple. Sometimes they're open, sometimes they're closed spaces in an office. You might have a screen where you share your content from your laptop or other portable device. But otherwise, it's relatively low tech in, might be some whiteboarding space and that's about it. But we've really seen, I think, a transformation in the last 3-4 years by bringing more tech into those spaces. I think lots of companies have had a crack, so to speak, or had a go at putting interactive technology. A lot of it's, in my opinion, and Jonathan will probably back me up, been relatively non-user friendly, not that great an application to work with. Some of the interactive whiteboarding products that have come and gone throughout the years just haven't been great. What I've been really impressed with, and I think it's been transformational, has been Microsoft Surface Hub. Now, they're very expensive. However, I think they really nailed, especially in version 1 and now optimizing version 2, the video conferencing layer, the interactive whiteboarding, and the ability to annotate. And when you have people in different locations using Microsoft platform, or even one of these in different locations remotely, the experience is fantastic. However, there's definitely opportunity to simplify and make things better. And, I think you've probably seen some of that at Neat. Paul, what are your thoughts on where we've come from, where we're going?
Yeah, I think the meetings, there's an interesting stat that I saw recently. If you look at the global penetration of video devices into meeting rooms, it's something like 8%. So there are still a lot of meeting rooms out there that have little to no technology. And when you work for a tech company, you're generally spoilt for choice. And I remember when, the pandemic first took place, I was working for Salesforce at the time. So I actually had a bit of a hiatus from this whole video technology scene. And as the pandemic hit, I was working with a number of customers on projects, and it all just came to a halt, because what we see, if you're not a technology company, they all had to change the way that they were working very quickly, and they were struggling with the bare basics. So we're asking our employees to work from home or hybrid. We don't even have mobility. We don't have VPN. We don't have video technology so that we can have some sort of ability to continue doing business. So people were scrambling all over the place just to try and get some of the very basics done. And, I think when you hear that there's only 8% of penetration into meeting spaces, you can see that there's a lot of organizations that haven't made the switch for whatever reason, or they've only done it, they've only put video devices in a small amount of meeting spaces. And I think part of that is, depending on the organization, it can be quite a daunting thing to get your head around traditionally. Like, I remember not so long ago, an investment in a high quality video experience for a single meeting room was quite pricey from a hardware perspective, right? So I'm not talking about all the other stuff. I'll talk more about what I know best, which is hardware. And that is anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000. And in some cases, a big immersive system, which was $500,000. That was the sort of price that customers had to consider if they were going to put video technology in meeting rooms. So, you multiply that by that, all those meeting spaces that aren't running any video, it's quite a lot of cost to consider. The good news is, though, that the market's changed quite a bit. So technology's gotten smarter, it's gotten more efficient, which is driving the price down, right? So it's actually a really good time for customers to reconsider, how do we now enable these spaces that we have? Because ultimately, these spaces cost you money, right? It's real estate. There's a price per room. There's a price per square meter. Are you actually getting the most out of that space? And the reality is no, because when I actually go and meet people at other organizations and I walk into their meeting rooms, they'll have a really nice looking table, but generally not much other than that, or a whiteboard. So we're asking ourselves, well, what is the productivity that we can gain from this piece of real estate when we come to this place? And generally, it's not very good. So that is a huge opportunity, I think, for a lot of organizations to think about, well, if we can be productive on our personal devices using smart technology, whether it be Microsoft Teams or Zoom or Miro or whatever it might be, how does that translate when we find ourselves coming to the workplace and having to work in a hybrid world when there is not sufficient technology in the room, or technology that is just not approachable and not usable? And I think that's the thing that has really caught my attention when I ended up leaving Salesforce and joining Neat, was to see how rapidly the technology had changed and how much it had improved and how much it had been simplified so that it can actually be attainable for a lot of customers.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. The prices have come down, just to get high quality video, as you say, into meeting rooms, whether they be small, medium, large, even, kind of unique ones, bigger, sort of maybe flexible type spaces. it's all plummeted down. You can get a lot better quality for lower investment, which is a great thing for organisations of all types. We have seen, though, Jonathan and I, we've seen in the projects we do an uptick in collaboration type areas where there's a need to not just have a video conversation, but also digitally collaborate with the content, interact with it, digitally whiteboard so that there's an equitable experience for people, those in the physical room, but those joining maybe from other rooms or, remotely at their home or wherever they may be. I mean, Jonathan, what do you think about some of the tech and how it's evolved over the last little bit and where it's heading?
Yeah, so in collaboration spaces, I really see kind of two key trends. One is, as you mentioned, well, now we've got to deal with people being hybrid. So some people are in the space and some people are remote. So now all of a sudden we need to be able to have facilities that mean both the people in the room and the remote people can collaborate on. And that is not a dry erase whiteboard or a post-it note stuck on the wall. So that's kind of the driving need. But how is that being addressed? Well, it's actually, I see it as a software layer rather than a hardware layer. So there's hardware in the room, we've had touch screens and interactive screens for a very long time. But what's making a huge difference is the software layer and the collaboration tools that go hand in hand with those touch devices, but also go hand in hand with the people sitting at their desk and being able to use it on their laptop or another room remotely. So some of the common ones I see used a lot, Miro and Mural, which are really great tools for being able to collaborate. But, I think in a collaboration space as well, it's very important to think about the technology early, because the way that you design the physical space has a huge impact on the types of technology you should use. And they really actually go hand in hand. So, when you're looking at a collaboration space, think, okay, well, what kind of technology and what kind of activities are going to happen in that space? And you should be designing the tech and also the physical space in parallel and hand in hand as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's one of the most frustrating things as when you work for a video technology company, there's almost an expectation that the technology will solve all the problems in the world. And the reality is that that's just not possible. We'll certainly try, but you can't underestimate the importance of good room design for the way that we need to work going forward. And I think David, going back to well, let's think about where have we come from, where are we at today, where are we going? I think something that is being discussed a lot more, certainly in the company that I work for today, and I have seen previously, is getting more collaboration between the likes of folks like yourself and furniture companies and builders to make sure that the technology is not considered too far down the end of the decision and design making process. Because if you build a room without that technology taken into account, or what you want to do with that room and how technology will play a role in that room, then you're potentially going to find that you're going to have some challenges. So I'm talking about things like the design of a desk, or a table. Is the table in that room designed in a way or deployed in a way that's suitable for virtual meetings and collaboration? Or is the acoustics of that room sufficient? Or is it going to cause you problems? So these are things that we find ourselves coming across from time to time where it wasn't really part of the design process because that particular customer just wanted a really nice looking office, a really nice looking workplace. And they certainly achieved that, but they didn't take into consideration the importance of technology and how that technology plays a role in the design of that space. So going forward, I think the market is becoming more aware of that. The customers are becoming more aware of that. The people that are involved in that process are becoming more aware of it. And that's really going to help from a number of standpoints. It's going to help with experience. It's going to help with complexity. It's going to help with minimizing cost, a whole bunch of things. The technology is always changing. The technology will change a lot rapidly than the furniture, right? So, your nice boardroom table, you could have that in that office for over a decade. But the technology in that room could change 2, 3, 4, 5 times, who knows? But just getting some basic things right will mean that the room can accommodate for today's technology and tomorrow's technology a lot better.
Oh, that's very true. I mean, we could probably talk for hours and hours about our wish and desire for the tech designers to be onboarded a lot earlier in processes, to get rooms right.
Yeah.
However, I have really noticed some big advantages, and this is highly relevant because not every project is like a brand new room being created. Well, a lot of in fact, probably the majority of uplifts in technology are just that. It's retrofitting into existing physical spaces.
Yeah.
Now, what I have really been impressed with just this year is camera technology. It's amazing what these cameras can now do using artificial intelligence, type stuff, and also physically locating cameras in different locations in the room to provide a better experience. I know Neat, I think it's the Neat Center, and there's other manufacturers doing different products as well. I think I've seen something from Logitech. I'm really impressed with putting that camera in the middle of a table, for example, and pairing it with one maybe at the front of the room or on the main wall, whatever the room design happens to be. And just the experience that creates for those joining a call remotely. You can really feel like you're part of the conversation and inside the room almost, even though you're not. It's so different to just a couple of years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it solves some real problems for customers because we hear the phrase meeting equity used a fair bit these days. And I think part of it is addressing that meeting equity problem. And I think as we go into the future, meeting equity will mean more than just the voice and the video. It will actually go to cover some of the things that Jonathan talked about earlier around, actually doing the work, actually collaborating, not just seeing and hearing each other, but actually getting things done. I think that's a very near future state for us. But the camera technology is something that really impressed me. That was one of the reasons I got back into this space, to see that, we're moving away from a world of mechanical PTZ cameras to digital, and we're seeing a lot of benefit come from that. And, that gives us scope to have multiple cameras in a space working together using, some very clever software and AI to present an amazing experience to the people on the far end. So, if we've got the limitation of one camera historically in a room, right? So if you look at a typical meeting room, you've usually got one camera at the front of the room, and that one camera is responsible for connecting that room to the virtual meeting. Whereas what we're going to see now with products like the Neat Center is another device that will augment that experience, and it will provide better video angles, better audio quality, because these products have microphones built into them as well. So it's going to help us with the visual. It's also going to help us with the audio. So customers have had challenging rooms with audio. We can bring the microphones closer to the people that are, as part of that meeting, and the cameras, and present them a lot better. Now, traditionally, to do that, it was just not in reach for customers. It was possible, but it required a lot of work and a lot of cost. And the reality is, most customers.
A lot of custom integration, custom programming.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
And I think that's why, if you look at the numbers, 8% penetration of video technology into the worldwide volume of meeting rooms. Well, that's part of the problem, is that if you don't get the outcome that you're looking for, or if the cost to get to that outcome is way out of reach, then what's the next thing that you do? Well, you generally do nothing.
Yeah.
That's been a real problem for an adoption standpoint. So I think the opportunity now is, we can use the technology to achieve that at a fraction out of the cost, which will then allow us to enable a lot more meeting spaces and give workers and employees a lot more access to the technology. And it will actually just become, as common as using your phone, right? We walk into a room, the technology just works. It does what we want it to do. This is the environment that I'm now used to. This is the environment that I've adopted as part of my workflow each day.
Well, I couldn't think of a better way to sum it all up, mate. Thanks, Paul. I would, totally agree. The opportunities lie there for organisations. They really have, I think, the opportunity that they can benefit from this transformational change that continues almost week by week. And you're right, such a low, 8% you mentioned. That's really astounding me. I didn't know that stat. I thought it was a bit higher than that. The ability for organisations to really improve the way their people are working and collaborating, not just internally but externally, is there. And it's now a lot more affordable. So something to look forward to. There's some space types or area types that we've discussed doing video on the desktop or maybe in small focus rooms in the workplace. We've talked about collaboration spaces and how tech products are now a lot easier and more user-friendly, and also room design, how important that is. That's always important. Always recommend you use a professional designer to work closely with your other designers in putting those rooms together. But thankfully, we've also got tech products that can help, even with just general uplifts. They're going to make life a lot easier. So thank you, Jonathan and Paul. Appreciate the conversation today. I think it's been really enlightening once again.
Pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having me today, Jonathan and David. Really appreciate it. Hope it was useful information to your listeners.
It was a great conversation. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Tech Simple podcast. To like, share, or discover more episodes, head over to Spotify. If you'd like to talk to us about AV in your workplace or learning environment, book an initial discovery call with David or Jonathan at konnectus.com.au. And remember, Tech Simple!